Time now, T-minus 1 hour, 24 minutes, 37 seconds, and counting. You can see those white dots as they're thankfully backlit for just a half a second by that lightning. That is the closeout crew who is leaving the pad now. Now that the side hatch has been safely closed, as we saw in the video from Mission Commander Chun Wang. Some nice parting words from them. And they are going to be heading over to Space Launch Complex 40, so that on the off chance that they need to that way, on the off chance that they need to come back to the pad for any reason prior to launch, they're not too far away. Just to address some of the chatter in the live chat and help out our moderators a little bit. Yes, there is still lightning in the area. Yes, we are still in a phase 2 lightning warning. No, the mission has not scrubbed at this point in time. Once again, they have 4 launch opportunities within the window present. And while the thunderstorms may impact the first launch opportunity, as long as they have not fueled the Falcon 9 rocket, they do have 3 additional backups within this window that last past 2:30 tomorrow morning. So still plenty of chances to get this Falcon 9 rocket off the ground. Looking at the radar right now, you can see the speed with which the storm system is moving through our area and is going to be getting out of Dodge here probably within the next 35 to 40 minutes, maybe an hour. It might not be far enough away by the time they would need to make the call on the start of prop load. But then again, it might be. I will couch this, and I am not a trained meteorologist, but I've talked to a number of them over the course of my decade career in local news and covering launches. There will be a weather briefing coming up here in about just under 22 minutes or so. And because we don't have mission audio, we won't hear the weather briefing being broadcast, but obviously if it impacts the T0 time, we will let you know just as soon as possible about any adjustments to the mission. But again, as it stands right now, things are still tracking towards liftoff at the opening of the window. But again, things could change. Take a look at the American flag there next to the countdown clock. You can see it has gone quite limp compared to other things were just about 10 or so minutes ago. The wind has dramatically died down here at the press site, but as you've just saw, the lightning is still quite active in the area, which is why you still see those blue lights out there at the pad, marking that we are still in a phase 2 lightning warning. Taking a look at our live chat here, I want to thank a number of folks for their support with this live launch coverage. I want to welcome in new channel members, Karen Krasner, Schaefer O'Neill, both joining us with channel membership at the mission specialist level, as well as Lucy Marie Emmons, Kevin Schreiber, Steve Lacey, and Dr. Elaine Clifford, all joining with membership at the pad leader level, as well as CK. Welcome aboard to all of you. We're glad to have you with us. I also want to thank our moderator and channel member, Clistia Lee, as well as other channel members, Beverly Knuckles and Daniel H., for gifting 10, 10, and 1 Spaceflight Now membership, respectively. So thank you to the three of you for helping to grow our community here on YouTube. And to the 21 gifted channel members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you all with us. Be sure to thank Clistia, Beverly, and Daniel in the live chat if you haven't already. And we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership. Astro Joe asks a good question that I wish I could say we had a really good answer to. Joe says, Will, since this is a south launch, what are the recovery zones named, i.e. Shannon, etc.? Thank you, sir. Just as a little bit of background to what he's referencing, for crewed missions heading up to the International Space Station, there are various points of abort where, if for whatever reason there was an issue with the Falcon 9's second stage as the rocket is making its ascent, there are points along the ascent corridor where they would target and abort. One of those is Shannon, which is a reference to Shannon, Ireland, which is the main last abort site as the Falcon 9 rocket heads uphill with the Dragon spacecraft. This one going south, a little bit different, and we'll show you the trajectory here in just a little bit. But during the X Spaces event that happened this past Friday, we tried to get a little bit of detail from the folks at SpaceX about the recovery zones. Broadly speaking, they are going to be just south of Florida, as well as out in international waters beyond the Caribbean. That's where the SpaceX first stage booster for the Falcon 9 rocket is going to be landing. And in the unlikely event of an abort, depending on how far into international waters the crew would potentially splash down, they may need to be met by the Coast Guard first before a Dragon recovery vessel would be able to get out to them. Obviously, they do have other marine assets that would get there faster, but we don't have specific names of those abort sites to provide to you. I wish we did. Excuse me. But if we get those, we'll be sure to pass them along. Channel member Jeff Hansen with a $10 super chat. Thank you, Jeff. Who says, go Kennedy, go SpaceX, go Falcon 9, go Fram 2, and Godspeed 1085. 1085 is the tail number of the first stage booster that is supporting this mission. It's going to be launching for a 6th time. And in fact, this will be the first time that a first stage booster is launching crew on its 6th flight. Up to now, all of the crewed missions have been on Falcon 9 first stage boosters that have had 5 or fewer missions. Or rather, 4 or fewer missions prior to the crew launch. You get my drift. B-1085's history includes the launch of the Starlink 10-5 mission back on August 20th of 2024. That was followed by its first crewed flight. That was the launch of the Duo on the Crew 9 mission using Crew Dragon named Freedom. That lifted off on September 28th of last year. followed up by the launch of Starlink 6-77 on November 7th, and then a mission that was initially referred to simply as RRT-1, later revealed to be a GPS-3 satellite. Lockheed Martin names its satellites after notable explorers and pioneers. That GPS satellite was named Sally Ride. Most recently, this booster has been used to launch a pair of lunar landers, robotic lunar landers. One of them has made it safely to the moon. The other is still taking the scenic route. Blue Ghost, of course, wrapped up its mission in early March, and the Hakuto R Mission 2 lander from Japan-based company iSpace is set to land on the lunar surface in the early June timeframe. So still quite a ways before that lander comes back and lands on the moon. It's going to make a brief flyby of Earth before making its final path out to make an attempt to land on the moon. We gave you a brief glimpse of the crew during the video we played for you earlier in the broadcast about the dry dress rehearsal. Here's a look at the four up close as they were going through their training at Hawthorne, California, at the SpaceX facilities there. You can see the side hatch for a Dragon simulator capsule there behind them with the mission patches of previous crews. You see at the point that they were visiting, the last crew that had added their sticker there was Polaris Dawn. So going by this point in history, this would be before the Crew 10 astronauts and cosmonaut completed their training on Dragon and added their mission patch sticker to this growing collection. And that would be followed by the completion of this crew's training. So they're preparing to embark on a free flyer mission in a polar orbit. Going from left to right, introducing you to the crew once again, you have Eric Phillips from Australia, Robbie Roga from Berlin, Germany, Jannica Mikkelsen from Norway, and Chun Wang on the far right. He's representing Malta today. Chun's hometown, though, is Tianjin in China. He's been a resident of Malta for some time now, having left China about the time when he was going to university, so in his late teens. Taking a closer look at each of the crew members in succession. And a bit of good news on the weather front. While the lightning's still popping off around the Kennedy Space Center, the hail warning has been allowed to expire, so that's certainly good news. I think none of us here at the press site wanted to potentially deal with dented cars this evening, so glad to hear that warning has been allowed to lapse. Coming back to the crew themselves, let's go ahead and talk about them one by one. Leading the mission, of course, is Chun Wang, who is the mission commander. 42 years old, he was born in Tianjin, China. He's an entrepreneur and adventurer who co-founded the Bitcoin mining company called F2 Pool back in 2013. Became the largest Bitcoin mining pool in the world for a while, and now is currently sitting in the number 4 spot. He proposed this mission to SpaceX back in 2023 and also funded the mission, though we don't have a specific dollar figure for this. SpaceX, like most other launch companies, does not like to talk about the dollars and cents for their launches, unless you're a customer, that is. You look in the live pictures for the Falcon 9 rocket, you can see some additional venting from the strongback. This is typical venting that we see roughly an hour out from a launch at Pad 39A. Moving along, the next member of this mission is Jannicke Mikkelsen. The 38-year-old is from Longyearbyen, Norway. Apologies to all of the Norwegian folks in our audience for my horrible pronunciation of that, I'm sure. Jannicke is an award-winning director and cinematographer whose film credits include Netflix's 2021, I believe, film Stowaway, starring Anna Kendrick, as well as the Queen plus Adam Lambert concert called VR The Champions. Jannicke is also a first-time space flyer. Representing her home country of Germany, Robbie Roga is the youngest member of the Fram 2 crew. 29 years old, born in Berlin, Germany. She's a robotics researcher who is pursuing her PhD on decision-making for autonomous boats in polar waters. She was part of a student-led team that helped design a satellite designed to induce artificial gravity while spinning. There were some human cells on board to help study the impacts of microgravity on them. Notching some history just on her own, she'll become the first German woman to head to orbital space. Finally, Eric Phillips, rounding out this 4-person crew, the Fram 2 mission specialist and medical officer. At 62 years old, he was born in Tawonga South in Australia. He's a professional polar explorer and the co-founder of the International Polar Guides Association, also flying to space for the first time today. Fram 2 mission unique in that it's heading into that polar orbit. As SpaceX's John Edwards, the vice president of Falcon and Dragon at Spacecraft, noted on X as well as in the Spaces event on Friday, the closest that astronauts have come to the type of orbit that these folks are going to be flying was the original Soviet Vostok and Voshod cosmonauts, who included Yuri Gagarin back in the early 1960s. Time now T minus 1 hour, 3 minutes, 41 seconds and counting. While this Fram 2 crew is getting the distinction of being the first humans to fly into a polar orbit, this was not the first plan to launch humans into a polar orbit. Once upon a time during the space shuttle program, STS-62A was set to fly astronauts launching from Vandenberg Air Force Base at the time, and would have been the first crew to head into a polar orbit. However, as fate happened because of the Challenger disaster, the plans for West Coast-based shuttle launches were ultimately scuttled, and that mission along with it. And that brings us to today, where Fram 2 gets to pick up where the promise of STS-62A began, sending humans into polar orbit and low Earth orbit. We're now T minus 1 hour and counting away from the first mission to a polar orbit with astronauts on board. For those of you who may just be joining the broadcast now at the hour mark, I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now, and we're getting ready to see these 4 crew members head up to the not to the International Space Station, but on a free flyer mission. This will be the 3rd time that SpaceX has launched a free-flying Dragon spacecraft following the launches of Inspiration 4 and Polaris Dawn. Getting a little bit of a video preview of the crew here in this little sizzle reel from SpaceX. Now getting pad level views of the Falcon 9 rocket. As just a quick note about the time here, you'll note our countdown clock is just a little bit ahead of the time from SpaceX. Come back to that in just a minute here. Our clock is in real time. What's coming in from SpaceX is coming in on a slight delay. So as long as we've got ground level views with our tracking cameras, we'll be making our call outs in real time. Here's a glimpse of the namesake for the Fram 2 mission. This is the original Fram vessel that was used for polar exploration in the late 1800s and 1900s. This is a small piece of that ship that is going to be flying on board the Dragon Resilience spacecraft with the crew of Fram 2. With less than an hour to go, I want to thank the 7,400 plus of you who are watching with us live. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button, share the stream. Allows more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage tonight. Also want to thank a few folks for their support this evening. Want to thank Tom Check for a $5 super chat. Thank you, Tom. The man without narcissism.
Arming of 4.100 launch preparation.
We're hearing a little bit of discussion to the crew right now as we're inside the 1 hour mark, just giving them some heads up on upcoming events.
Listening into a little bit of communication from Mission Control in Hawthorne, communicating with the crew there on board the Fram 2 mission. Want to thank the man without narcissism for a $2 super chat, saying, keep making great steps for humanity. Love. Don Flea, thank you for the $10 super chat.
Let's go for launch.
SpaceX copies from 2, go for launch.
And a good confirmation that the crew is go for launch. Saw that video from Chun Wang saying that they were go for launch there at the time, but this is the official marking of that now. Here's a graphical overview of where the Fram 2 mission will be orbiting as compared to the Inspiration 4 and Polaris Dawn missions and the International Space Station. As we're getting ready to step into the fueling process for the Falcon 9 rocket, let's go ahead and talk about the countdown timeline, the nominal sequence of events here now within an hour that we're watching for before liftoff of the Falcon 9. little bit different than an uncrewed vehicle launch. The SpaceX launch director will verify that they're go for the start of prop load at T-minus 45 minutes. If that go-ahead is given, the crew access arm will complete its retraction, pulling away from the Dragon spacecraft, wrapping that up at about T-minus 42 minutes. T-minus 39 minutes, the Dragon's launch escape system is armed. And that's followed by the actual start of fueling, with RP-1, a rocket-grade kerosene, being loaded on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages, and liquid oxygen being loaded on board the Falcon 9's first stage. T-minus 30 minutes is when the cryogenic helium is loaded on board the Falcon 9's first stage. We'll come back to this in just a second, but just want to take a moment and take a look back as SpaceX is giving an overview of the crew's day so far, going from crew walkout, going into the crew access arm where they signed the SpaceX logo where commercial missions are signed. The NASA meatball on the left-hand side is reserved for the crew rotation missions to the International Space Station. The ingress process for the astronauts is set to be the last time that they have a crew that is going to be actively helping them to get into their seats. You see the seats being rotated here. When the Fran 2 mission lands in the waters of the Pacific Ocean and is brought aboard a Dragon recovery vessel, part of their mission is actually to egress or leave the vehicle and get onto the vessel unassisted. Coming back to the countdown timeline, once that cryogenic helium is loaded on board the pressure vessels for the Falcon 9's first and second stages, at about T-minus 23 minutes is when second stage RP-1 loading concludes. About T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is when the strong back chill down process begins. It's when SpaceX is conditioning the feed lines there at the pad prior to second stage liquid oxygen load. We see that visually manifest as the so-called big vent here at pad 39A that begins at around T-minus 20 minutes and 30 seconds. T-minus 16 minutes, second stage liquid oxygen load begins. About the 10-minute mark, there's one final comms check with the crew on board the Dragon vehicle as well. T-minus 7 minutes, the engine chill begins. That's when SpaceX flows a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps. That helps protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes before liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T-minus 5 minutes, the Dragon will transition to internal power. 4.5 minutes before flight, the strong back retract sequence gets underway. That's when the clamp arms just beneath the Dragon's trunk will open up, and the strong back reclines a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket, stays in that position until liftoff, at which point it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. T-minus 3 minutes, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. Same is true on the second stage, about a minute after that, at which point the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. T-minus 1 minute is when the control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch at T-minus 45 seconds. The engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds. And if all 9 engines are healthy and ignite, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. Coming up here at at 9:46 p.m. Eastern, 01:46 UTC. Coming up here in just a hair under 49 minutes.
Reminder, KSC does remain in the phase 1 lightning watch and in a strong wind warning until 2200 hours.
Time now roughly T-minus 46 minutes and counting. We're just about a minute or so away from the point at which the SpaceX launch director will make the call on the decision to proceed into fueling. We'll bring that audio up for you once those announcements begin.
Looks like we've got all sign-offs on the go, no-go poll. Now, as we mentioned, once we get the instructions to the team that Jesse just talked about, then we'll hear the next instruction, which is to prepare and retract the crew
Attention
access.
operators on countdown. The time polling is complete. Dragon and Falcon teams have pulled go for propellant load and launch. Stand by for control room and abort protocols.
Now that's the great news we were
For
waiting
all
for.
operators in MCCX and Hangar X, both control rooms go into lockdown in T-minus 45 minutes. Will remain in that state until the launch escape system is disarmed. All operators are to remain at their console and maintain a sterile cockpit until MD confirms successful disarming of the launch escape system following orbit insertion or propellant offload in the event of a scrub. For non-urgent no-go conditions, brief the CE or LD and they will approve aborting the countdown. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operators shall call hold, hold, hold on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch auto sequence and immediately proceed into launch abort. At T-minus 10 seconds, launch control will be hands-off and relying on automated abort criteria for the remainder of the count. Operators advise the launch director where the structural breakup or fire is imminent occurring per Dragon manual escape flight rules. Launch control. At this time, you may proceed with arming the crew arm for movement.
Proceeding on crew arm at this time.
And some good updates from SpaceX Mission Control. We heard that they are go to proceed into propellant load. Confirmation that crew access arm retraction has begun. You see the arm now swinging away from the Dragon spacecraft and the Falcon 9 rocket. A good view from inside the white room, moving away from the Dragon. You can see the logo there just above the trunk. Call that we heard. The crew access arm has now fully retracted. Shortly we'll be hearing the call for arming the launch escape system on the Dragon spacecraft. Let's listen in for that.
I think right now they're just waiting for the last data confirmation that the arm
Dragon
is retracted.
SpaceX, you are go for Section 6, close visors, and arm launch escape system.
Dragon copy.
That voice you were hearing in response to Mission Control, that is Jannica Mikkelsen. She is the vehicle commander of this mission.
System.
As a reminder, right now we have the 4 crew inside Dragon. They're the only people inside. The blast area of the hazard corridor has been cleared. The
SpaceX copies. We're monitoring.
Monitor.
Just running through final verification of the escape system being armed. May hear an additional call out.
Is verified armed.
Excellent news.
And with the launch escape system armed, the visors have been closed, as we heard just a moment or two ago. Coming up here in just about 4 minutes and some change, they'll start to load propellant on board the Falcon 9 rocket. RP-1, rocket-grade kerosene, will flow on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. And liquid oxygen will then as well flow on board the Falcon 9's first stage.
30 seconds.
Yeah, that announcement, loud venting to the crew, that's as we're getting the Falcon 9 ready to begin loading propellant into the tanks.
Yeah, and you're
We're just about 2 minutes ahead of the start of prop load. Getting ready to start prop load here in just about 10 seconds. Lightning out offshore is moving away from the pad, which is good. Prop load is now underway. Now less than 35 minutes to go. Now that propellant load has begun, if there is any issue outstanding, either from a technical perspective or concerning the weather, that would result in a scrub of the launch attempt today, since SpaceX does not have the ability to hold the countdown with its Falcon 9 rocket. Taking a look at some of the training that the Fran 2 astronauts underwent while they were at Hawthorne at SpaceX's facilities to get familiarized with the Dragon spacecraft. They spent about 8 months in total going through various training exercises, both at Hawthorne in California, here in Florida at the pad. There were also some outdoor training activities. You're taking a look at a photo right now from the crew's experience up in Alaska. The crew also spent according to SpaceX commentators, about 5 days on a sea kayaking trip. These types of extreme environment exercises are not unique to the From 2 mission, but are part of most crews' training as they prepare for spaceflight, whether they are professional astronauts or increasingly this growing collection of commercial and private astronauts. Part of the From 2 mission, there are 22 experiments that the crew are going to be conducting while on orbit. I want to take a moment to listen to the SpaceX broadcast as they're talking about some of these experiments.
Is the very first X-ray in space. And what I have here is a mini X-ray generator and a digital detector plate. And so the crew is going to use these to take X-rays of different parts of their body. Why do we care about X-rays in space? A few reasons. One, if we're going to be walking all around the surface of different planets, we might have an injury. And an X-ray machine is a standard in any emergency room. But another interesting use is that bones actually lose their calcium in space from not being in gravity. And this machine can also help us measure astronauts' bone density, so we can actually keep track of how they're doing in that respect. And finally, this can allow us actually to look into machines. So if we have a machine that's malfunctioning, instead of having to take it apart and figure out what's wrong, we can just take an X-ray of it to diagnose the problems.
Now, while the engineer in me is like, this X-ray device is really cool, I actually think it's really cool that we're kind of making life in space very similar to life on Earth. And you also have some other devices here with you that are doing the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I'm very excited about is that we will also be doing the very first exercise in Dragon. Now, Dragon is a smaller volume, so we have to get kind of creative with exercise. And how we're going to do that is with blood flow restriction. So blood flow restriction is where we actually cut off some of the blood flow to, in this case, the legs. And we're doing this with two different devices. The first are these shorts here. They're hydro shorts, and they use an elastic band with Velcro to reduce that blood flow. And the other are these Delphi cuffs that use an inflatable cuff to actually control that blood flow. And what this does is a force multiplier for exercise. So by reducing the blood flow, it tricks your muscles into thinking that you're working harder than you are. So you get a little bit more bang for your buck there.
I don't know, exercise. I want to talk about exercise. I actually want to go back to the X-ray device. When I go to the dentist and they do my dental X-rays, they put a big lead apron on me and everybody leaves the room. You can't leave the Dragon capsule. So what are you going to do when you take X-rays in Dragon?
Yeah, it's a really good question. You're right. You can't leave the capsule. So the most important thing that we do is consent the crew. So we really lay out exactly how much radiation we expect them to get from this device and what the risks are so that they can make an informed choice of the risks and the benefits. However, this device is FDA approved, and there's very little leakage of the X-ray outside of where you're pointing it. And it has these very cool, what are called collimator knobs, which control these lead plates that allow you to really narrow in the amount of X-rays that you're going to get. So you're really only getting X-rays in the area that you want to image.
Yeah, that's really cool that we have the X-ray device to focus on the health of the people. We have working out devices to help them stay healthy. Now, it seems like they're going to need some nutrition, some food. Can you tell us more about some science experiments on that?
Absolutely. I think food is one of the most challenging issues that we have to solve for long-term missions. And we are taking one step with From 2. They will be growing the first mushrooms in space. And they are going to be growing oyster mushrooms, a very delicious varietal that doubles in growth every day. So it is, considered a perfect space crop. So we'll see how they do in microgravity.
Okay. Now, I understand after we return to Earth, the crew's got one other medical experiment they're going to do, and that is something about unassisted leaving of the spacecraft. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we have to think about exploration. So right now, when Dragon splashes down, we have a whole recovery team and ships and fast boats, and it's very exciting. But when you land on the moon or Mars or any planetary surface, there's not going to be a recovery team there to greet you. So we really want to start understanding what crews are capable of right when they land. And the best way to start understanding that is on a relatively shorter duration mission where they are a little bit deconditioned from not being on Earth, but not as much as, say, a 6-month mission. So this is the safest environment that we can do this test. And we're going to have the crew hop out of their seats on their own, take their footrests off, go down, get their survival gear, get it out of the hatch, get themselves out of the hatch, and walk all the way to the medical bay without any assistance.
No one's going to help them with their luggage. Okay.
I see why they're going to be working out on orbit so that they can be prepared for when they come back.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much.
And a very good science overview of some of the experiments that are going to be conducted during the course of the From 2 mission. Currently at T-minus 26 minutes, 17 seconds, and counting. Coming up, of course, next will be the start of the so-called big vent, as SpaceX is conditioning the feed lines there at the pad. That additional venting will start at about T-minus 20 minutes and 30 seconds, lasting until T-minus 16 minutes and 30 seconds. Taking a look at our live chat, first off, I want to thank the more than 12,000 of you who are watching with us live this evening. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button. Share the stream, allows more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. Also want to thank some folks in particular. Lisa Lynch, one of our wonderful channel members, the $5 super chat. Thank you, Lisa, who says, love spaceflight now. Thank you for the tireless work of the mods, keeping the chat clean and on track. You all do an amazing job. And yes, want to add to that a big tip of the cap to our wonderful moderator team for all the wonderful work that they do in the live chat. You're here. Also want to welcome in new channel member Dreamweaver, joining us with membership at the pad leader level. And a thanks to channel members Gunnar S., Stephen Frazier, and Toby Wobe for gifting 10, 5, and 5 memberships apiece. Just watching for confirmation, but it looks like they may have terminated the Phase 1 lightning watch, which is good. That is further confirmation that the bit of nasty weather that we have is pushing off. Looks like actually Phase 2 has terminated, not Phase 1. So we are still in a Phase 1 lightning watch, but the Phase 2 lightning warning has been allowed to expire for all areas of the Cape. And actually, a new additional update, it looks like the Phase 1 Lightning Watch has also been allowed to expire. So, you will likely still see some lightning behind the rocket, and that's because the thunderstorms that have been passing through our area are now out to the east and continuing to push into the Atlantic Ocean, but will appears to be no longer be impacting this launch. Just good news. Taking a look here, this is part of the Starlink network. This is the plug-in placer. You may recall this was used during the Crew Dragon mission for Polaris Dawn, which allowed them to access the Starlink internet service while in low Earth orbit. The plug-in placer will also be used on the Dragon Resilience once again in support of the From 2 mission to help with communication. This is an overview of the missions that the Dragon 2 spacecraft has flown so far. There have been 2 repeat flyers on the Dragon spacecraft, so while 62 crew members have flown, there have been 62 individuals that have taken a ride up on Dragon. Jared Isaacman and Michael Lopez Alegria are both repeat flyers. These are the 3 different configurations of the Dragon spacecraft. You've got the docking adapter on the far left, which is used to interface with the International Space Station. The cupola in the middle is what's going to be used on this flight. And the Skywalker, which was used on Polaris Dawn. You're seeing the big vent happening now there at the pad as SpaceX is conditioning the feed lines prior to the start of second stage liquid oxygen loading. Now approaching 17 minutes prior to the planned liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket and Dragon spacecraft. Just about 30 seconds left to go on this vent process, and then in now less than a minute, liquid oxygen will begin flowing on board the Falcon 9's second stage. Just about 15 and a half minutes left before the planned launch of this Falcon 9 rocket. With the time we have left, let's go ahead and talk about the workhorse vehicle for SpaceX. Falcon 9 stands at 70 meters or 229 feet in height and has a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. Majority of that is made up by the Falcon 9's first stage, bottom two-thirds of the rocket. This particular booster, B-1085, has flown 5 times before. This will be its 6th jaunt to space. At the base of the first stage are 9 Merlin engines, which burn a rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are black carbon fiber landing legs that will be used to land the first stage on the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas. Normally, because of the abilities of the Falcon 9 first stage booster, most crew missions these days have the ability to return for a land landing at landing zone 1. However, because of the trajectory of this mission, they will be implementing a drone ship landing, going back to what SpaceX used to do prior to the launch of the Crew 7 flight. Moving up the Falcon 9 rocket is the inner stage. This is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core, which is surrounded by carbon fiber. In the image on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere, tail first like a big old dart heading towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the vehicle's second stage, and at first stage main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. Second stage engine nozzle is housed safely inside the interstage adapter until stage separation. Speaking of the second stage, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine, or an MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 220,500 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired just once prior to the separation of the Dragon vehicle. And then after the Dragon is a safe distance away, it will perform a deorbit burn to help drive it back into the atmosphere, where it will burn up and help prevent the creation of additional space debris. The MVAC engine burns the same propellant mix as the first stage, that is RP1 and LOX. Finally, at the top of the vehicle, not payload fairings this time, of course, but the Crew Dragon spacecraft. This one named Resilience. As we saw with the SpaceX graphic, this particular Dragon vehicle features a cupola underneath the nose cone. Coming up on the final 12 minutes ahead of liftoff, want to go ahead and talk about where this Falcon 9 rocket is going to be flying once it leaves the pad. This is one of the big marquee parts of the mission, this unique trajectory that it's flying heading into a polar orbit. When the Falcon 9 rocket lifts off from Launch Complex 39A, it's going to go due south, flying over part of the Sunshine State as it makes its ascent here, following that green arc. First stage booster again is going to be separating and targeting a touchdown on the drone ship called a short fall of gravitas. A little bit different than the style of trajectories we've done before, but really wanted to emphasize the uniqueness of this polar orbit heading into a 90-degree inclination from the equator. From-to mission will spend about 3.5 to 5 days on orbit, and will splash down off the coast of Southern California. This will be the first time that the Dragon 2 spacecraft is going to be splashing down off the West Coast. This is part of changing up the flight path so that the trunk of the Dragon, once separated from the crew cabin component and exposing the heat shield, is designed to splash down over the Pacific Ocean and decrease the possibility that it could touch down on land, as has been the case with the last few Dragon trunks up to and including the one that was a part of the Crew 9 mission, the return of the Dragon called Freedom. And as a matter of fact, getting a good overview graphically of some of the splashdown sites that are available to SpaceX off the coast of California. So it looks like there are 3 that are principally going to be used for this mission and for other Dragons. Those are the Los Angeles site, Oceanside, and San Diego. The noise you're hearing is the helicopter just passing overhead. Less than 10 minutes to go to the planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. I want to thank a few more folks in the live chat for your support today. Our thanks to Roblox Duolingo for a $2 Australian super chat. Thank you, Roblox. Thanks to Lloyd Green also for a $2 super chat. Channel member Toby Wobe marking 8 months with us as a channel member at the pad leader level, saying thank you, Spaceflight Now team. Thank you, Toby, for your continued support with channel membership. Cyclops 2066 joining us with channel membership at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard, Cyclops. Also want to thank Old Man Gibb, one of our channel members with a great handle name, for gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that, Gibb. And to our 10 newest gifted channel members, welcome aboard to all of you. We're glad to have you with us. Be sure to thank Old Man Gibb in the live chat if you haven't already. And we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership.
Seat 1. How many times have you been to the South Pole before?
To the South Pole, around 10 or 12 times, but to both poles combined, around 30.
How long did you take to ski there?
My last expedition in Antarctica, I skied a new route
Yeah, they're talking to the crew about their
fourth glacier and across the plateau to the South Pole. This expedition was almost 900 kilometers, and it took me 50 days to complete.
Can you believe that in just 42 minutes we'll fly from here in Florida to the South Pole?
Unbelievable.
Sounds like they're talking to Eric Phillips about his experience in the Arctic. And yeah.
Some words from the crew talking about the crew's experience in the polar regions. Just heard a call that the engine chill has started. SpaceX loading a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, which will help protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during that startup sequence. As we're approaching the 6-minute mark, did hear that call for stage 1 RP1 loading being complete. So far, the countdown has been progressing smoothly. Dragon should be shifting to internal power within the next minute. Want to address a super chat question from Dave Krupel. Thank you, Dave, for your support. Asking, are they confident in launching after the big turbulent storms that came through within the last hour and a half? And yes, they have done a pre-fueling weather check and pulled go to proceed. So barring another weather hiccup, they should be good to proceed with liftoff. And now
Strong back, retract.
Figure for terminal count.
And good calls there. Dragon is on internal power, and the strong back is pressurizing for the retract sequence. You'll see the clamp arms just beneath the trunk of the Dragon vehicle slowly open up, and then the large structure to the right of the Falcon 9, the strong back, will recline a few degrees away from the vehicle and stay in that position until liftoff. Good call that the strong back is now in motion. Should hear those clamp arms move here in just a couple of seconds. A little bit hard to see through the vapor there, but you see those clamp arms opening up. Or there's one and there goes the other. Now a little less than 4 minutes to go to the planned liftoff of this historic From 2 mission. The next call we should hear is that the first stage liquid oxygen load has been completed. Just about 30 seconds to that point.
Just waiting to hear the call outs right now for stage 1 LOX load.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
With that call, we're waiting for a similar call on stage 2 LOX load. Dragon is on internal power. About 2.5 minutes to liftoff. Should be hearing one more call out for that stage 2 LOX load being complete. Standing by for that call out.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And with that call, the Falcon 9 rocket is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. Less than 2 minutes to go to the liftoff of From 2. What you're seeing there in the live pictures are the ground gas closeouts. Seeing a little bit of overflow from the water tower there. You can see it just off of the left-hand side of the crew access tower. This is a normal process as we get close to liftoff. 1 minute to go. For the call that the vehicle is in startup. Let's listen to that final call for go for launch.
Dragon, SpaceX. Go for launch.
And with that final go for launch call, we're just about 30 seconds.
Go for launch.
And Fram 2 answers back that they are also go for launch. One last communication from the crew, just about 20 seconds to go until they embark on their space flight. 15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, engine ignition, and liftoff. Liftoff of the From 2 flight. The first humans will fly into a polar orbit. The Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. Booster is throttling down as the vehicle is approaching max Q. For the call for max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Vehicle now traveling faster than the speed of sound, more than a minute into flight. We're coming upon 3 events in fairly rapid succession, starting in about a minute. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO. That'll be followed by stage separation, and then second stage engine start. Call for MVAC chill. They're thermally conditioning the Merlin vacuum engine ahead of its ignition. Two minutes into flight. About 30 seconds to MECO. Call for stage 1 throttle down as we're approaching MECO. Coming up in just a little more than 10 seconds. Good view of the crew on board. MECO. Stage separation.
Copy, stage 2.
Advance ignition.
And the boost back burn also beginning now.
And there.
This boost back burn lasting a little less than 30 seconds. Nice little nebula jellyfish there. About 3.5 minutes into this flight, next milestone coming up. Now that the boost back burn has ended, we're looking for the start of the entry burn. Coming up about 6.5 minutes into flight, SpaceX will ignite 3 of the 9 engines on the booster stage to begin to slow the vehicle down. Booster now at an altitude of about 131 kilometers.
Copy.
Voice you're hearing from inside the Dragon just there, that was Jannica Mikkelsen, the vehicle commander for this mission. Still have good views there. Well, had good views. A little hard to track given the trajectory heading due south. For those in the southern Florida area and in the Caribbean, let us know if you're getting some good views of the Falcon 9 rocket. Love to see what you're capturing tonight.
Nominal.
Got about a minute to go before the start of the entry burn here. So far, a nominal flight for the Fran 2 astronauts. The first time that all 4 of them have traveled to space.
Nominal.
Something like a Starlink mission. Another nominal trajectory.
Dragon copy. Nominal.
Confirmation of a nominal trajectory as we're just about 20 seconds away from the start of the entry burn beginning.
Nominal.
And we did see on the left-hand screen that the entry burn has begun.
Copy. Nominal.
Late confirmation of the entry burn being complete. Just caught the very tail end of that. Now, a little more than 7 minutes into flight, we're coming up on the first stage landing burn, which should be starting in about 30 seconds. We haven't seen any signs of it.
Copy, Panama.
Got a question from one of our channel members about what the abort zones are called. apparently we have an answer to one of them. It is Panama.
We've now got video on first stage. Landing burn has begun. And a view from the drone ship. Legs are deployed. And touchdown after 6 flights.
And the booster that has taken the From 2 crew out into space has now made it back to Earth.
That call for stage 2 on internal guidance there, or terminal guidance, excuse me. They're approaching the conclusion of the upper stage burn. Second stage engine cutoff is coming up here in just about 10 seconds.
MVAC shutdown.
With a confirmation of MVAC shutdown, we are now less than a minute away from the point at which the Dragon resilient spacecraft will separate. Look from inside.
Dragon copies nominal.
Launch escape system disarmed.
Oh, another good call out. They're in orbit where they want to be. They've disarmed launch escape system. Doesn't need it anymore. We're 191 kilometers up. We've got the view of the crew. Right now, Dragon, or the second stage, is going through a very short period. We're making sure.
I was just about to start talking about what we're seeing there as the Dragon has now separated from the Falcon 9's upper stage. Dragon Resilience flying free for the From 2 mission. This begins the first part of a 3.5 to 5 day free flyer mission.
To deliver you safely to your polar orbit. Enjoy the views of the poles, send us some pictures, and our hearts will be, minds will be flying with you as you go over the poles. Have a great flight.
And Dragon, this is your launch director here. Pretty wild to see the From Adventure sailing to the poles once again, over 130 years from its christening. This time, though, with Starlink. Godspeed, From 2. Cheers.
Cheers.
SpaceX team calling up to Dragon. What you're seeing right now, the shots of Dragon, that was the Draco thruster checkout. And there's the crew. And I think Jesse and Sarah on the right next to one of the small crew windows, that's probably their 0G indicator, as we call it.
Yeah,
I can't quite make it out.
Dragon SpaceX, nominal dehumidifier activation and service section Draco checkouts.
Copy. Nominal.
Want to make a quick note about that 0G indicator that you saw. That is a bear that was chosen by the mission commander Chun Wang in honor of what he says